So hi everyone, I'm Nat, for those of you who do not know, and it's nice to see a lot of returning people. I work at Exceptional Individuals and we support neurodiverse individuals achieve their utmost potential. Now, today is an interesting one because we've been going over the different kind of types of dyslexia. So not last week, but the week before, we did phonological dyslexia. And just to give you a bit of a recap, that is about how the brain reads. So it might kind of get words kind of confused or like trip them up. But today is visual dyslexia, which, to be honest with you, most people will have a combination of the both, but some people only demonstrate some characteristics. So it's quite good to know if you didn't resonate much with phonological, but today you're like, do you know what? That sounds just like me. And you might think, is it that important? Well, not when it comes to getting a diagnosis, but it is important when you're looking for ways to support your brain, because if you know the way it works, you can figure out the hacks. Okay, Claire was saying I was trying to tell people about that and I couldn't say that word to save my life. Don't worry about it. I have to have like loads of notes all over the place. All right, so I'm looking forward to this one because I had a lot of fun making it. So as mentioned, we often talk about dyslexia, dyspraxia, autism, ADHD, but today it's focused on dyslexia. Now, I am 100% dyslexic. I am continuously getting my words mixed up or joining words together. My mates have great fun calling me out on it. Like, for instance, once when I was trying to say, I accidentally smacked the door, I said, I smacked, smack door, like I blur the words together. And you end up coming up with really creative words. I always sound like I'm trying to be like a hip teenager coming up with new words, but no, it is just the dyslexia. Now, this one, when we think of dyslexia, we normally think of people who are very visual as their strength, but that's not always the case. Sometimes that can be where the deficit or the kind of problem area is. Now, as a lot of you already know, we support people with recruitment, getting into work, helping organizations. So I'm not going to focus on that a lot today, but feel free to check out our website, exceptionalindividuals.com, if you do want to learn a little bit more. So I'm going to mainly be focusing on what it's like to have visual dyslexia. Obviously, none of these ways are going to be completely foolproof, but they're more demonstrations to show you what it feels like on the more severe side. And hopefully you'll be able to place these analogies and examples into real life scenarios. But as we said, a lot of the time we focus on just deficits or just one thing. It's like all dyslexics are great communicators. All people with autism have no social skills. Well, that's not the case. There are more common characteristics in some than others. But on this one, we're going to be talking about dyslexics who may struggle with visual processing, not just reading things out. So very much a real thing, even though it's talked about a lot less. So what exactly is visual dyslexia? Well, it goes under a few names, and it's also known as surface dyslexia, whatever that second word is, and whatever the third word is. So I'll let you read them out for yourself because I can't read them. Dysesthetic and orthographic dyslexia. And to make it very, very clear what this is not a problem with eyesight. You could have 20/20 vision and still have visual dyslexia. A lot of these things you might think those who have poor eyesight would also struggle with, and that's true, but these are not the same thing. I just happen to have glasses and be dyslexic, but not related. Okay, next thing is it relates to remembering/discriminating visual gestures. So what we mean by that is, what do we mean by discriminating? We're not being racist to letters. It's that maybe you've got a D and a P and the brain can't tell the difference. It's discriminating because it's not giving its own significance to an individual letter or symbol. This is why B's and P's and D's and Q's are always mixed up, because even though we know they're different letters, the brain reads it as if it was just one letter. Now, first question of all, and feel free to answer on your phone if you're able to, if not in the chat. Do you miss out on words or lose your place when reading? So a nice simple one. This is your bare basics of dyslexia. And as I'm imagining, quite a lot of you in here probably do have dyslexia, or at least always. So if you always have it, it's quite common. But I also want to make it clear that I'm not trying to diagnose the nation. So yes, a lot of you who do not have dyslexia will also say, that's me, that's exactly me. But just because you have some of the characteristics doesn't necessarily mean that you are on the neurodiverse spectrum at all. Now, the reason why the brain misses out words or loses its place is, again, with the letters, it doesn't put much significance on what it's reading. This is why dyslexic fonts tend to have like a bit thicker at the bottom, because it kind of weights the word down to the page. But normal words with kind of like a plain white background, the brain isn't able to really like focus or lock on. Okay, that's really good. All right, this is a fun one. Spot the difference. Who doesn't love it? And yeah, oh, well done, guys. Oh, okay, I've figured out how to draw. The amount of effort I went to, by the way, to find an adult spot the difference, I could only find ones of SpongeBob. But these are really good. And I think most of you have found it. These are the ones you spotted. So the aeroplane, the clock, the little top thing on the lamppost, and also the bus number. And when we think of spot the difference, we always think that's quite a juvenile, childlike thing to do. But those with visual dyslexia can struggle with processing differences. So for instance, maybe, you know that game when you're younger, when you have like lots of different things on the floor, you put a blanket over it, someone takes the thing away, and you've got to work out what's missing. You might think that's related to memory, and sometimes it can be. But in this instance, it's about the brain being able to see difference, and it can't always be able to process it. As some of you would be looked at the image for ages and be like, they're the exact same image, I noticed nothing. Or do you ever get that when you walk in a house and someone expects you to see something new? Or a classic example is someone had a haircut and you were completely oblivious to the idea and they were expecting a compliment the entire day, but your brain wasn't able to process how they looked like before to how they look like now. That is also a very typical thing for those with dyslexia. Okay, next one is, do you ever get any of these letters confused? So there's lots more examples, but these are just some of the most common ones that I could find. So Louisa says, apparently I was very good at my assessment at what is wrong with the image, but miss words out left and right and center and mix words and letters up. It varies so much depending on the person. Remember, there isn't really such a thing as phonological dyslexia, surface dyslexia. It's kind of all one, and it's more about which one the brain, what areas it finds more difficult. So no one's going to walk away with a single diagnosis of visual dyslexia, for example. Now, most of you, 7 of you, have put I's and 1s. I get that. I also get 0s and noughts confused a lot. And you know how a lot of people put like the lines through the letters or the 7? I always get confused by that even still. T's and I's, P's and Q's, B's and D's. And that again comes back to the brain not being able to process the difference. It's key to know that you absolutely know the difference between a G and a Q, but because they're so similar, the brain kind of like fills in missing information. And that's actually a good thing. You know, that's a really smart characteristic of the brain. But just like the spot the difference, when the brain was seeing part of the image is missing, it's under the assumption that that image should be an exact replica. So if there is some information missing, it automatically fills it in. So in some ways, that's an advantage. But when you're doing activities and you're purposely looking for missing information, that's when you can run into a few troubles. All right, now this is a fun one. And I would love to know, what is this map representing? I purposely missed it out. Or Thomas, I think if anyone can work it out, it'd be you. I mean, it took me ages to figure this out. Actually, I lie, I didn't figure it out. I had to get the answers. Okay, we got flights, countries. It's not flights or countries. And while you're having to figure out or trying to make head or tails of this ridiculous map, obviously, oh, Vicky has put trades. That's not far off, but it's not quite right. Why this is relevant, and I purposely picked an absolutely terrible map, is that people with visual dyslexia can struggle to be able to see an image and like pull information from it or convert meaning. So let's see a couple of answers that we got. Flight, no. Countries, well, yeah, is related to countries. Political ties between countries, between the West and the Middle East. Bingo, who said that? Me, oh, Louise, spot on. I don't know how you got it so correct, but yeah, the map is about the political ties between the US. And I believe, if I was good, here we are. So you can see here, the solid line is friends with the US. The ... are enemies with the US. And if they're kind of longer dashes, the relationship is currently uncertain. And no lie, this was a real map which was used. I know there are contentions between those countries already. Yeah. So maybe, obviously, this was a very extreme example. There's sometimes maps where you look at and you're thinking, I should be able to understand this. I'm looking at it. I know it's got the information I need on it, but my brain is unable to process it. And this is why some people with dyslexia or dyspraxia can struggle with reading maps or on Google Maps as well. No, there is a key. It's very, very difficult to read. But you get the idea, right? When you're wondering why some people can't read maps, even though they look ridiculously simple, yeah, just go up the road, round the corner, left at the roundabout. It's because, again, the brain is not able to like visualize it or join the dots. Oh, here's another fun one. Lots of fun games today. I want you to read this out and do whatever it tells you to do. We said, yeah, I think it's a stupid diagram. I won't be able to take anyone through that. It is, I literally got it from one of the websites, which was worst diagrams and maps of all time. So it's not you on this occasion.
Is it not supposed to be in focus?
Yeah, do not worry. Your eyes are fine. It's purposely meant to be blurry.
Visual. And
I think I'm going to give this a go. It says visual processing is characterized by difficulties understanding written symbols, including the symbols used to represent language, numbers,
equations.
Represent.
Yeah.
Idea.
Going if you know it.
Represent language, numbers, equations, I think.
Yeah. Well, the very end bit says, when you finish, hit the cat icon. Claire says, is it supposed to go blurry the more that you read it? No, but why I put this here is a lot of people who have visual dyslexia normally say that they find reading very difficult or they find it very blurry. And obviously, the initial thought is that they've got bad eyesight. And yeah, poor eyesight can lead to blurriness, but this is not the occasion. It's different. It's that what happens is, say if you've got words and they're like kind of jiggling about, the brain automatically blurs it. A good example where this is true is if you flip your arm around, you will see that it kind of blurs. And that's because the movement is moving faster than what your brain is able to process, so it fills in the gaps. And that's what motion blur is whenever you take a blurry photo. And for some people, this is even a slower delay. And when you're like reading and you're moving around, the eyes can't keep track. So it automatically creates a blurring effect because the brain is kind of like slotting in new bits of information. So again, sometimes you can look at the board or the TV and you can find things blurry or reading a book, but you've got perfect eyesight. So this is why some people are commonly misdiagnosed. But visual stress is a very real thing when it comes to dyslexia. And this is why, if you've ever heard people say, oh, print on yellow paper, have a bit of a coloured overlay, all that really does is change the contrast, which can make it a bit easier to read. So Vicky says, if you squint a bit clearer, I can only make out about half. Oh yeah, if you squint, you can kinda. It's one of those things, isn't it? It's always easier to read once you know what it's all about. So Katie says, I have a visual impairment. And that can also, if you've got a visual impairment, knowing what is because of one thing and what is because of another thing can be quite difficult.
Wouldn't it just be true that we're characteristically slow readers?
Typically, you can be slower at processing written imagery, but it can blur because sometimes it's through the way you read and the brain is kind of like working out what the pronunciation is. Other times it's about looking at the individual letters and the brain working out what they're meant to be. Like some people with dyslexia can be really fast readers, but fast doesn't always mean accurate. So quite often they'll insert words that weren't even there or take out words.
But children are usually split into different reading groups like in elementary school, correct? And
yeah,
aren't you going to find as a population those that are the slow, poorer readers more likely to be dyslexic?
There's I wouldn't like to say like all the time, but it definitely tends to be. If you show a lot of intelligence, but your reading age doesn't reflect that intelligence, then yeah. So maybe that you know every type of dinosaur by the age of 7, all the kind of scientific names, but when it comes to reading a fairy tale book, you really struggle. That would be a typical sign of dyslexia at a young age. Another good example is, say you're reading a book and it says, my father is called, but you read it, my dad is called. Yes, it's the exact same meaning, but it's still technically wrong because you haven't read exactly what's on the paper. Your brain decided to kind of insert it with another word. Oh, we've got some interesting comments here. I'll just give them a quick read. Louisa says, black on white is very hard for me. Coloured overlays make it a lot easier. I tend to read via audiobooks while trying to follow the book. Yes, that's exactly what I do. That's my favourite tactic. So I always have the audiobook playing in my ear and I'm reading the book at the same time. And it kind of kicks my bum to like keep on track. Vicky has said, my daughter uses tinted lenses. I find it easier when I look through them too, hence being here today. Yeah, visual, there's, you're probably aware of it, but Myers Ern condition, so I struggle pronouncing it, but this is when certain colors, I don't know if you know when you ever get like a Quality Street or like a tinted paper and you look through it, like it's red and the world is all looking red. That's not because it's converting the world to red. What it does, it's stopping red visible light hitting your eye. And some eyes are more sensitive to different colors. This is why one color isn't correct for everyone. You've kind of got to try them all out and work out which color reduces visible stress the most for your eye. Angel says, I love watching TV with subtitles. Me too. Despite being dyslexic, I find it a lot easier to follow the narrative. Oh, Chantel has, Irelkin syndrome. I'm doing a workshop on that soon. I promise I'll learn to pronounce it. Closed captions. Is there a difference between IRAS syndrome and visual stress, or is it the same thing? Good question, Vicky. So those of you that don't know, there is a condition, Ireland syndrome and visual stress. Now, it's not officially recognized all across the board. And the amount of people who can diagnose it is very small. But it's kind of saying it's a type of dyslexia where visual stress doesn't necessarily have to be about dyslexia. So yeah, they're definitely related, but as of not, they're the same thing. No, they're not. Okay, nice to see a lot of discussion today. And thank you guys. If any of you have anything to add, please do share. We're all learning at the same time. This one is, I researched it, by the way, for the worst pie chart of all time. It is awful. Which quadrant can we find the direct spending on corn ethanol? So looking at this diagram, and I appreciate it's small, do you know where you'd find the direct spending for corn ethanol? Katie says, I sometimes find it difficult to physically read a US English book because my brain is trying to process it as it's spelled in the UK English. That's interesting, and I can see why it would do that, but I hadn't heard of that before. I work a lot in the US, and I must say, I always get stuck on color. Even though I know it's just a letter removed, my brain just gets stuck on it every time. All right, so a few of you, oh, I see it. Okay, these dots are all over the place. And hopefully by the end of this webinar, you'll start to see a lot of patterns or a lot of similarities to all of these things. They're all slightly different. So whether it's a graph, a chart, a infographic, the brain can really struggle in able to pull the information out. This is why it is important to, when you're presenting information, to put it in a way which is accessible to everyone. I don't know if any of you can see why, but this is wrong on so many levels. So the way that it's split doesn't even make sense. Fossil fuels is 70 billion, yet renewable is 30 billion, and yet they're shown as equals. We've got a circle in a circle in a circle. The numbers are confusing, but the correct one is the yellow, the second yellow. That's where you would find the direct spending. And this is obviously an extreme example, but sometimes even more simpler like charts can make it quite struggle for someone with visual dyslexia. Again, you've got the information there, just like American English. It's there. You've just got to do a very minor conversion, but the brain struggles to do that conversion. Okay, this is a different type.
Yeah.
What is the image of? Looking at this, without looking too hard, what is the first thing you see? And this comes down to how the brain recognizes images and how it converts it into meaning. So you see a picture of a dog, your brain knows it's a dog. But this is hopefully a good way to demonstrate it. So Vicky says it's a woman looking away, but I suspect there's more. What else have people seen? A girl with a hat, a woman in a fur jacket, an old woman, a young woman, a woman on the side, a woman with a hat. So some of you are saying you've seen a young woman, others are saying you've seen an old woman. Now, it's interesting because I'm sure you've seen these things before, but it can vary so much. Now, why here is some of you saw an old woman, other people saw a young woman, and the first one I saw was a young woman, but if you get your hand and on the screen kind of start off and slowly start revealing the image, you'll see the older lady on the screen. And that is because the brain has the information, but the way that we choose, well, not the way we choose, the way that the brain chooses to process information is different depending on the individuals. So to say what some of our brains processed it in a way where we saw a young lady looking into the distance, other people looked at it and the first thing they saw was an elderly lady. There's other ones where you look at, I think it's a frog and a horse, or a vase, or two people looking in each other's eyes. And the main reason why this is to show you that just because it seems obvious to you what an image or a map is representing doesn't mean that that's what another person is automatically understanding from that. So if you look, do you know, it's very difficult. I'm looking at it now and I can't find her, but she was there earlier on. Oh yeah, so the bottom bit of her coat, she's got the young lady's face is the old lady's nose. April said another good example is the duck or rabbit. Yeah, that's a classic one. So hopefully you're trying to see what I'm trying to express here. Visual dyslexia is seeing the world from a different perspective, but not necessarily wrong. It's just different to the mainstream. So I couldn't say what the mainstream would see on this, but there would definitely be a large percentage of the population that would see it one way rather than the other. I would say the most common one here is young lady, from what you said. But I must say, once you've seen one, it's very difficult to see the other image again. The brain continuously has to really work hard to reconvert it back to the old image. Another great example is when you're looking at clouds and your friend can see a Tyrannosaurus Rex, but you can't. All right, number 10, write down the mistake. Look at this pattern. What is the mistake? And this is to demonstrate that sometimes the brain is always looking really hard to process something, but it doesn't always take in the entire image. So if you're struggling with this, take a step back and look at it outside of the box. If you're really looking at it and you can't work it out, you're probably focusing far too hard in the wrong direction. I love watching all your confused faces. This is great. Okay, well, I think we've probably got a few results now. Let's have a look at what most of you have said. The is in there twice. The 5, okay, 5 should be blue. No. Number 10 is not in line. It's down the question, nothing. Colors. Oh, the. So that's really interesting. It is, in fact, the. Can you find the mistake? I know it's one of those things. As soon as you know, you're like, duh. But looking at it now, some of you are thinking, oh, what colors are wrong? Maybe it's the tin. Is it the position? And that's because our brain was automatically looking at the numbers rather than looking at the entire picture. Oh yeah, Angel said she was going by the colors of the rainbow. Perfect. And our method to how we solve problems is different for everyone. But the key thing to take away from this is if you have visual dyslexia or dyslexia in general, the brain isn't processing wrong. It's just processing different to however whoever made this wanted you to look at the picture. So imagine this, you're always getting the wrong answer. Rather than just give up, try taking a step back and looking at the problem from a bit of a different perspective. But I must say, when I first did this, I couldn't work it out. I had to go to the answers. So you are not alone. All right, one more puzzle. And I'm sorry, this is a tough one. If you're able to work this out, hats off to you. But do take in mind what we've been saying all along. Take a step back and look at it from a different perspective to try and work it out. So Louisa says, we're trying to look at the colours too. I just remember I got caught out on the before. I only just got it. I know that's the worst when you've been caught out before and you do it again, eh? So to give you a clue, this is a phrase. So the answer is a common phrase which is used before. So Marina is, yeah, oh, so Marina is my life. Yeah, that's in there, but that's not the phrase.
Is it robot?
Oh, okay. We've got my life, my single life. Oh, the pain is real. My life, my life. One is spacing. You only live once. No, near. My life. I don't get these. Might as well be gibberish. Lots of you are near, but not quite. So we see my life, but look at the ones. The ones are significant. Count how many ones there are and convert it into a phrase. Okay, so yeah, it's for once in my life. For once in my life. So if you again count the ones, 1, 2, 3, 4, there's 4 ones in my life. So in the whole sentence. And that was an incredibly hard one. And I'm not saying if you can't work these out, you have visual dyslexia. The point I'm trying to make is that to give you a little bit of empathy on what it can be like. So obviously these are extreme examples, but once you have the kind of the code or the information, like the algorithm, it's really easy to work out. And when it comes to reading and spelling, that's all it is. It's a set of codes, a set of conventions, a set of principles that once we're all on the same page, super easy, barely an inconvenience. But if you aren't given that information, it can be really difficult. All right, you're doing really well. We're almost there. But by the end of this presentation, you will know visual dyslexia without a shadow of a doubt. Okay, next one is catchphrase. All right, do any of you watch this on TV? I love Catchphrase. It's like my favorite game show. And I bet you're always like at home thinking, I know the answer. If I was on the show, I would be amazing. But when it comes to it, it's quite difficult. So why this is quite a good one for visual dyslexia is some people with dyslexia will find things like this really super easy, but they might find things like the chase, when you've got to answer on the spot, really difficult. So we're going to play a bit of catchphrase now. Okay, here we are. What? Chantel got it right. Middle of nowhere. Correct. Yeah, and you're middle of nowhere. Well done. Okay. Spot on. All right, we'll do another two just because who doesn't love catchphrase? Okay, yeah, Vicky, you did it. Stick out like a sore thumb.
Oh.
Absolute pro. All right, we'll do one more. Otherwise, we'll be doing this for the entire day.
Wishbone.
Yes, well done. Magic wishbone. So, some of you find that really easy or really difficult. And this will really, if you are dyslexic or anyone in general, you'll notice some people will find it super easy, others will not have a clue. And this can be quite interesting because if you have dyspraxia, that can be more about like having the ideas in your head, but not being able to get the ideas out. That idea, it was on the tip of my tongue, but you couldn't get a hold of it. Where visual dyslexia will be more about not having the answer at the beginning, but the brain is not having the exact kind of code to work it out. Interestingly, only one of you found you really love visual questions. And for me, I love it. I think I definitely have phonological dyslexia where I struggle with the writing and kind of getting the words out. Angel says she doesn't get jokes or limericks. That's another really good example. Exactly the same concept. It's the brain having to process fast enough to work out what is being said. And sarcasm is another one. It's just another step in the way of efficient communication. And none of this is telling you how to fix it, but if you understand where it comes from, you might be able to find different solutions or problems that can help you get around it.
I prefer watching something like The Chase rather than Catchphrase.
Really, yeah, I do love The Chase as well. But I do like Mr. Chip.
I like Mr. Chip, yeah.
Oh, I don't know where this music comes from. Okay, this is a fun little quiz, and I need you to say what you see. I didn't realise when I did this the music would be so cringy. So what colour is the text? Write it down as quick as possible. So colour is the text. Nice. Green. Well done. So there's two more of these, so get ready. You probably know where we're going already with this. Oh man, remind me never to use this music again. What word is red? Nice. Oh, I see some of you put green, red, red. Yeah, the answer is blue. So again, you thought you had the information of what you were looking for, but the brain kind of jumped ahead of the gun. And actually, if you read the question more, it is blue. And one last one. I feel like a game show host today. This is great. All right, last one. What color is the background? Blue or turquoise? Well, do you know what? I'll accept turquoise. But yeah, it was blue as well. How many black dots are there? So look at the image, and how many black dots can you count? Oh, Richard says none. Vicky, none. It's an optical illusion. Seen this one before. Cheater. 0, 4, 24. Don't know. They keep moving. The correct answer is 0. And yeah, sorry if it hurts your eyes. No liability. All right. Before I show you this one, I want to say again that our brains are very, very smart. Sometimes it's about processing slower, but other time they process too fast. You know, when you look at colors, the brain just knows. It's super quick. It's longer to read than it is to see images. That's why we say an image says 1,000 words. And when you're given a problem, the brain will try and work it out as quick as possible using all the information it already knows. And sometimes when people change the rules or the wording just a little bit, it can completely throw you off. Another good example is when people say, okay, I'll see you at 4:45. You're like, 4:45? Oh, you mean 44? No, 3:45. And it's the exact same thing. It's just because it's being worded in a different kind of direction, it can completely throw you. And with the optical illusion one, the information we were given was confusing. It was always 0. There was never any black dots, but because of the visual stress that image put on our eyes, it gave a kind of false positive. So we thought there were dots, but there weren't. And that can apply to many different things on life. But please remember that all of this are extreme examples of what visual dyslexia is on a day-to-day basis. So these are all extreme examples to give a bit of empathy. This one is looking at this. Do you think the letters are moving? Another optical illusion. So for you, are they moving up and down, or are they standing still, or are they doing something completely different? So yeah, Maria says still, changing color, changing color. Yeah, if you look at it, they're not moving at all. But because of the change of contrast is so rapid, it tricks the eyes into creating motion. And remember, motion on TV at least doesn't exist. It's all an optical illusion. It's just lots of frames that are so near to each other but slightly different that it tricks the brain into think it's actually motion. Now, if you've got visual stress, this can be why watching a computer screen on white and black text can really make your eyes go a bit blurry. And it's because it's an optical illusion. This is why when some of you say, oh, I use different colored paper or I have tinted screens, this is why it works. Because essentially it's telling your brain, this is not an illusion, just read what it says. So yeah, it might look like they're moving, but it's not. And this can be very similar to what it is like to have visual stress. Okay, I've nearly overdone it on the examples now, but this is, I think, the last one. And a very difficult one, may I say. Which of the suggested shapes share a feature with the given shape? So the shape in the corner that says W-E-Y, which letter shares a feature? So what is something that one of those options have in common with all the letters W, E, and Y? I probably broke a few minds today. Okay, we've got 5 in F. Interesting. I wonder if we'll be like the sheep mentality. Oh no, okay, we've got some different answers. All right, well, in that case, it is T. The correct answer is T. Any ideas why? And this would resolve multiple steps. So no idea, but it looked like it. Nice. So if you look at the letters W, E, and Y, they all have symmetry. F doesn't have symmetry. O has unlimited symmetry. T has 1 bit of symmetry, and H has 2 symmetry. So if you look at the others, W, E, and Y all have 1 point of symmetry, like T. So it's as simple as that, really. Once I've told you, it's obvious, but if you're not in the know, it seems unfathomable. That is dyslexia all over. If you do not understand how your brain works and how it processes information, everything is always going to seem impossible. But the more you're able to really pinpoint how your brain works and what kind of type of it is. So this is why, for me, knowing whether or not you have phonological, surface, whatever types of dyslexia, predominantly, can be really beneficial because it can help you start solving some of those difficult problems. Okay, Claire and Louise thinks it's magic. Fair enough. So would not O be more correct? No, O's not correct because O has unlimited amounts of symmetry when we're only looking for 1 bit of symmetry. So W would be down the middle, E would be horizontal, Y would be down the middle. Wow, I think after today you all can have a good rest. This is a lot. Oh no, this is the last one. Where's Wally? And for those Americans in the audience, where's Waldo? So just drop a pin on where you think Wally is. Nice. Looks like Chantal got there first. Then Louise. Okay, Louise, now you're just getting cocky. You found the other guy. Oh, what's his name? I can't remember his name, but he's the evil one. Okay, yeah, you found all the other Wally hats. And this is a great thing for visual dyslexia. It can be, the brain gets a little bit overwhelmed. If there's a lot of information and you're told to find the key bits of information, the brain can really struggle and get tripped up. This is why if you've ever been in a corporate setting and people say, you know what, I prefer my emails in bullet points, and you're like, you just do bullet points, but you never really knew why. This is the exact reason. The brain can kind of get overloaded with information if it's kind of all condensed. But if you're able to pull it apart and do it in kind of need to know sections, then it finds it so much easier to understand what is being asked of it. I struggle with the full page. I can't see them with a larger page, even after hours. Yep. April, I knew you would find this for me. It's Oddlaw is the bad guy in Where's Wally / Waldo. Oddlaw is Waldo spelled backwards, which I didn't know that. That's interesting. So here's some tips for visual dyslexia. Keep it simple and reduce visual distractions. So maybe you want to have a tint on your screen. Maybe you want to remove things in the background where the eyes can get kind of pulled away from. Try not to overload it with too information. You could always print on colored paper, but when I say print it on colored paper, you want to find the color that works best for you. Sometimes texture can also help because it gives like depth and shadow. Adjust the screen. That's also another really common one. Yeah, it's like things like Claro Read has a built-in screen changer which can change the colors, which I've used before. But for me, I just prefer putting a bit of tinted screen over my laptop because I just find it easier. Vicky says, my daughter literally sees the world through rose-tinted glasses. I like that. That's a really poetic way of putting it. We've got consider audiobooks for longer reading. We've had some of that already. And also text-to-speech software, which is just another way of getting the same information out. And dyslexic-friendly fonts like Dyslexico, or there's loads of different fonts. Personally, for me, I don't find dyslexic fonts very helpful, but for other people, they do. And what makes a dyslexic font is that each individual character is very unique, and the brain will find it a lot harder to confuse them. So that's all it is. It's just each individual character is far more unique, rather than, like, say, P's and D's looking similar. But if any of you today saw, you know what, this sounds a lot like me or a lot like someone I work with, you can always get an assessment for exceptional individuals. I talk about it every week, so I won't go into much detail, but feel free to drop me an email or get in contact with us. And essentially, we can help get that equipment for you, such as speech to text, text to speech, different colored overlays, extra credit if you want to be able to print on different colored paper, but the resources aren't available in the office. These are just some of the examples where you can get support and training. This is for the UK, but if you're outside of the UK, you can get assessments done privately, but that's kind of on an ad hoc basis, so just let us know. Vicky says, I heard that sans serif fonts are easier. Do you know what? It really depends on the individual. For me, I'm a Helvetica kind of guy, but each to their own, really. Well, Louise, yeah, it really is difficult. The dyslexic font for me, I don't like particularly. But now we're running a little bit over, but if any of you have any questions, now is a good time to ask them. All right, well, feel free to get in touch this way. And what I would say is you've been an absolutely fantastic audience. Today was far more chaotic than normal, but I think that's the very nature of visual dyslexia. It's how the brain interprets information and what it chooses to focus on. So I hope that was fun and interesting to you all, and I hope you have a good rest of the day. No, thanks all. Always great having you.